Hi everyone, this is Anna Carvlin at All Chicago. And if somebody could just raise your hand so I know you can hear me, that would be great. Okay, good. So I'm going to get started here. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm Anna Carvlin with the HMIS team here at All Chicago. We're going to go through the transition to HMIS for matching and your next steps in this process. Okay, hang on one second. There we go. You can see my screen. Okay, so we're going to talk about why the switch, the timeline, some of our accomplishments, looking ahead, the nuts and bolts of what you're going to do next. So updating your unit list, requesting a match, and then exiting a client without requesting a match. And so as we're going along here, feel free to put questions in the question box or the chat box, and I will try to get to some of those during this, and otherwise we'll get to them at the end. Okay. So why are we switching? So first of all, we're switching because providers asked for this switch. So people expressed a want to stick with one system and not have to jump over to Google Forms and just have everything through HMIS. And the HMIS team agrees, especially because looking at this last point here, we would like to get to a more automated matching process. And in order to do that, we do need to get all of these match processes into HMIS. So again, just, one-stop shopping for providers, not having to jump over to Google Forms to make a match request and also a rematch request. So the other piece of this, of course, is the reporting. So it's easier on our end to look at, when you made a match request, and then that time frame between then and when a client is enrolled or housed into your project. So just a brief overview of the matching process. So some of you have been to the PSH provider work group, so you've heard me talk a little bit about this before, and you may even heard about this over a year ago when we were talking about this and trying to get this implemented. And so there was a long pause in between there, and so anyway, so the overview of the matching process is that essentially this is based in ShelterPoint, which many of you will not have familiarity with. Many of you will if you do have some shelter projects. And so when your units are all full, nothing happens. But when you take a client out and you have an empty unit, that indicates to us that it's that you are requesting a match. And so there's ways to work around that, of course, and we can keep a unit full even if your client isn't in there. We can add a fake client, but I'll get into that. So essentially, though, after that, at least as of now, the process is the same. So if you remove a client from a unit, we know that there's an empty unit. That indicates a match, a referral request. And then the same thing happens. So essentially, our matching team will get an email showing which units are open, and then they will still right now refer to the one list in order to make those matches. Okay, so this picture just shows shelter point, and I'm gonna show you that too on HMIS. Okay, so the first thing that we need you to do, well, you've already done something. You've submitted your unit list onto Google Forms so that I can input that into HMIS, which we have done for the most part. If you should know if you've had any issues, and I've reached out to you, and some of you have been in contact with today, so I haven't gotten to those, of course. But so your unit list should be in Shelter Point as in Service Point as of now. And so what you're going to do is to go check and see that it's correct. And one of the things I would keep in mind is that when you submitted the unit list, many people had lots of singles and no wheelchair accessible, which was a little surprising to me. So I wonder if you could just rethink that, or like if they're scattered site and you can seek out a wheelchair accessible unit, then we would just call basically all of your units wheelchair accessible, so that if you really had to tailor it, you could. We would want to include that in the list, if that makes sense. So if you have any questions about that or you're not sure, just go ahead and email me. So what you're going to do first, just to double check your unit list, is you're going to log into Service Point, navigate to Shelter Point, open your project, choose the Coordinated Entry System list, view all, and then the number one thing, of course, is that you have to have access to Shelter Point, and you should have a list. So if either of those are not true, you gotta let me know. So let's get out of here, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So a lot of you are familiar with some of these modules on the side, the client point, etc. So we're going to navigate to Shelter Point, and then I'm going to find the project that I'm interested in. You probably will have a shorter list than I do here. So you're going to choose, and then you might have a couple of lists depending on how we set it up, or depending on if you used to have a list that you use and will continue to use. You're welcome to use that list. You may find eventually that this CES list is useful and you don't need a second list for your own purposes, but that's completely up for you, up to you to decide, and it just might be extra duplicate work to have these two lists. So you submit that, and then you go here to view all, and then this shows your whole entire list, and a lot of you will have a lot longer list than this. But this is going to show you what the unit list looks like, and this is typically this is the system that we're using. So we have 2 families in this list, and so we've got 1, 2 for family, and then min and max amount of people that it can hold. And at this point, we're not concerned about age or anything. We just want to know min max. And then this unit is accessible. And then we've got 1, 2, 3 individual, and 1 of those is accessible. And then we've got this overflow, which always shows up, and we want to make sure not to use that. So I'll get into that a little bit more later too. So let's just say you want to add your client to the family unit. What we're going to do, so we're moving on to adding your client. So you're going to check in the client and search for your client. And then if I wouldn't worry, well, yeah, you can change the date if you need to. And then here you'll see this head of household is test. and then let's just say their partner or their child is the fake. So then you're not going to click on that. You're just going to enter the head of household, because what will happen is if you click on this fake, that one will probably go to a overflow, and we don't want that to happen. So we're only entering the head of household. And that correlates with how we do coordinated entry, because we're only interested in housing or tracking the housing of the head of household. And then we track family in the assessment. So we know how many family members there are based on the standardized housing assessment. So this all you can leave the same, and then save and exit. Oh, you know what? Okay. Okay, so that's because I had a service attached to this. But that if that happens to you and you get an error, don't worry about it. You should just go ahead and be able to save and exit out of there. And so this is now what your unit list looks like. You've got your head of household in the client list. Okay, so next we are moving on to requesting a match. So once you've entered all of your people into the units, which if you are entering clients who've been there for a long time, you should definitely put the date that they actually entered. So when you're ready to request a match, let's say this person is leaving in 2 weeks and you know that their exit is in 2 weeks, and you definitely want to get the ball rolling to get a referral. And so you're going to take this person out of that unit, and you don't necessarily have to unenroll them from the project or exit them from the project. So you're just taking them out of this unit. Okay, so now you've got that empty unit, and that's going to show up on this automatic email that will go to our matching team. Okay, so removing a client without requesting a match. What we were hoping to do, and we may be able to do in the future, I'm not sure, is to be able to click hold, and then that unit would show up as not empty. But for whatever reason, this is not communicating with our SQL reports, and so that's not going to work right now. So we have a workaround. You're going to do what you would do is remove your client if they are leaving. You definitely want to remove them, and then you would add a fake client from a list, and we've got a list of these fake clients just for the hold for now. And so this is definitely a workaround, and we're hoping to adjust this in the future. So I took that client out, they're exiting, and I'm going to find the hold client and then just save and exit. And then that client is not, that unit is not empty anymore. So this unit will not show up on the report that goes to the matching team. Let's check if there's any questions. Somebody's surprised we're using Shelter Point. Yes. So the next step in this process, so you can have up to 10 fake clients as of now. If we find that this ends up being, it shouldn't be a lot. It shouldn't be more than 10. If you do end up needing more, we're going to have to create more. So you're going to have to let us know. So you can let us know if 10 is enough. So editing your unit lists is not something we're going to ask you to do. I know many of you are familiar with how it looks on the back end. And so I'll give you an example. I'll show you one of Howe's just so you see how it looks on the back end. So we've got a family section, floor, room, bed, and then the list of units. So while you can get in there and edit them, some of you, we ask that you not, and just go ahead and email me when you need to change something. So if you're gaining a unit, losing a unit, or for whatever reason need to edit your unit with the I would think the biggest issue will be editing the type of the unit, so the min max or the type, because maybe you have scattered site or whatever. I don't know. I can't anticipate all the reasons you might need to change it, but if that is the case, just let us know. So a couple of notes here. So like I said, your HMIS, the client's HMIS enrollment in a project and the entry into a unit list may not always coincide. So if you anticipate a client exiting and you want to request a referral, remove the client from the bed a few weeks before exiting them from the project. And I say bed because, of course, that's what it's called in Shelter Point. So with the overflow, as I mentioned, please don't use the overflow option because it doesn't show up. If you're trying to add a unit, it won't show up on our list if you were to exit that person. So there's lots of reasons not to use the overflow. So the reason that might have happened is you were trying to edit it or add a unit, or you forgot to remove someone from a unit before entering another person onto the list, or like I said, you accidentally attached a child to the entry to the project, child or partner or any other family member aside from the head of household. And so hopefully if any of you are skilled assessors, you'll be familiar with not including the family members on your entry. And so again, this is a process that we started last year and really took time to try to figure out. This is with the long view of increased automation and less human error. That doesn't mean we won't need a matching team, but what it does mean is that there will be more calculations on the back end to figure out who needs to be matched where. And so a lot less decision making, more decision making on the front end by all of our work groups and whatnot to figure out who needs to go where, but then less decision making on each individual match and referral. But the referral itself will need to always be a person doing it. So potential issues include this is also based on your need status. So what'll happen is you request a match by exiting a client, or you just happen to have an open unit already before this process starts. And then once your client is in the process and enrolled, then you can add them to the unit. In addition, you'll want to update the need status to enrolled. And so the other important piece of this is the rematch process. So what you'll need to do is if you are requesting a rematch, you have to, if you've already put the person in the bed and in the unit, then you'll have to take them out and also request a rematch with the need status and also exit them from your project, of course. But usually what people forget is to update the need status. So then if you attach another person to the unit entry and don't assign a unit, they will be put in overflow. I already mentioned that. So only add HOH, the head of household. Providers need to update need status. And then, yeah, so just keeping up to date on adding and removing clients, updating the need status, and I can show you this article too. Providers editing their own lists, and then any unanticipated scenarios. So if you have ideas of what things you think could go wrong with this, definitely email me, definitely put it in the chat box. This is not all my ideas, this is a lot of people's input. I'm just doing the webinar and putting this into place, and hoping for a lot of feedback from the community. And also keep in mind, permanent housing providers are the first cohort of this process, and so we definitely anticipate some roadblocks, but hopefully not too many, and also anticipate a lot of feedback from, so we're definitely open and want feedback from this process, because we will be including everybody who works with the match process in HMIS once we get this a little down and see how it's working. So just as a reminder, with the referral needs status, you can look at this glossary that is online, and it just describes all of the need statuses and when you use them. And just keep in mind, the gray pretty much you'll never use unless you were specifically told to. Red you won't use. But these are all the rematch needed. And then of course we want to see when the person is enrolled and housed and in progress to enrollment, etc. So in terms of a timeline, early 2018, we've already started talking about this. Early 2019, we renewed this discussion. I was brought on board last year, and we renewed this discussion this year. More recently, we completed an internal trial, and then October, we completed a trial referral with a housing provider, and then November 2019, we're up to 128 unit lists that have been completed and input into HMIS. And I am hoping to get through these with a fine-tooth comb. We have had a team working on this, and so I'd like to double check all of these, but I really hope you all can too. And so before we get off, I'm going to show you again what it needs to look like. Of course, we're having our webinar today, and then we're hoping that you put your clients in by next week, because the putting the clients in should be the easy part. And then beginning the matching process December, because once you all put your people in, then we will have to work on the report side and get that going. And then of course, it's hard to anticipate when we'll bring everybody on board, because we want to see how this process rolls out. So before I go to questions, let me just again show you the actual structure of the unit list. So we're going to PSH, CES, and then, so what you should see, and I think we did a pretty good job on this. I did see just a couple of mistakes when I was going through this, but we want this to be pretty tight. So the number and then space, family space, dash space, min 2, comma, space, max 3, etc. So just, I'm going to send out an FAQ sheet, and I'm going to also post this post the webinar online. You can refer back, but and I will post how this needs to look so you can refer to it. Okay, so please ask questions. If you don't have any questions right now, you can email me. And then let me check the question box. Okay, so our existing unit list is for nothing. No, your existing unit list is not for nothing. You're welcome to use it. And again, just keeping in mind, we're only talking about PSH, permanent housing. So if you're familiar with using your shelter list, if you have another project that you're used to working in, this unit list has nothing to do with any reporting aside from the actual matching process. So your unit list is, nobody's that, I mean, we don't use it. If you guys use it and it's useful, you can continue to use it, but we do not, we don't use that. And so it's up to you if you want to keep it. Some people said they wanted to keep it and some people said they don't. We set up 10 fake clients for each agency. No, that shouldn't be necessary because you are able to put a client into two different units in two different projects, just not two different units in the same project. In what circumstance, that was from Eddie, and the first question was from Carolyn. So in what, and this is Azalea, in what circumstances would we remove a client without requesting a match? In those circumstances, some people, like some units will be needing a paint job, or I can't anticipate all of the scenarios, but there are definitely scenarios where a project has empty units and they're not requesting a match. When will we exit a non-HOH household member? Will we need to do anything? No. In turn, that was Laura, Laura Bass. No, like you don't ever need to enter a non-HOH into the actual unit list. So just the non-HOH, when you enter the person into the project, you can include them in the project, but you wouldn't include them into the unit entry ever. So are you saying for all our PSH programs, we now have to go in and enter all of our clients into Shelter Point? Yes. Yes, that is what we decided, and it is what we decided as a group. And so this wasn't necessarily just, it wasn't necessarily just the HMIS team. I mean, I wish that there was something more specific on HMIS that was tailored to this process. Perhaps in the future there will be, once, because there's such a need in coordinated entries nationwide and required by HUD, and so they may come up with a better system in WellSky, with a WellSky vendor who has own service point, but for now, this is what we have. And so how does this affect the 2-to-1 match process? So what happens is your first match is a 1-to-1, and then you get your 2-to-1 on the rematch request. And so it doesn't affect, I mean, in the back end, it affects it. Let's just put it that way. But we have addressed that. And so it will be, the processes that we've decided on, the policy as it stands is still the same. And then can you review again how to request a match? Yes. So what you'll do is, here's your unit list. And as it stands, because you've got 1, 2, 3, not counting the overflow, you've got 3 empty units, you are actually requesting a match. This will show up on the report that goes to the matching team with these 3 units listed. The matching team will figure out who is eligible based on this, as well as your eligibility criteria in the project that's set up in Service Point, and make the match or make the referral. And so, but again, if you've already got somebody in there, you're going to remove them. So like this is a hold. Let's just say you had a paint job going on for 2 months. You couldn't have anybody in there, but now you're ready. You're going to exit, remove that person from the unit. And then now when we send the report to the matching team, or it gets automatically sent to the matching team on a daily basis, it will have your project along with 1, 2, 3, 4 open units that our matching team can match to. Okay, so it says, that says shelter inventory, not PSH. Okay, so yeah, I was saying how it's a little unfortunate we are using the shelter in, the shelter point for PSH. It is a workaround in a way, but I think you'll get used to it, and I think that looking in the future, like you guys won't get in here a ton, especially because your clients tend to stay for a long time. So you'll just need to have your clients in here. The rest of the process is very similar. You'll get an email. Everything else is very similar. The things that are different are that you're going to have to enroll or put the person in the bed during the enrollment process, so we know that you're in the process of working with that person. So and that was Stephen Aquino. So this is Marianne Morris. She says, so for units that are not ready or even near ready for occupancy, should we put them on the fake hold? Yes. So you should keep them on the fake hold. And if you anticipate, because like I said, we're not going to be matching people through this until December. And so if you think that that might happen in December, I wouldn't bother going in and doing it right this second unless you want to practice that. That's fine. I would say if you want to do that by the end of December, that's okay. I'm hoping everybody completes their units, their unit list by next week, so that so I take that back. Yes, I do hope that you can have your whole entire unit list, including the fake clients, by next week. But if you anticipate your units being open by December and you want to get a match for them by then, you may want to leave it open. I'll leave that up to you. What about the PSH programs that utilize CHS and hardly use CES? Right, CHA. So we did talk about this, and we're coming up with a solution. So like if you have a ton of CHA units, and sometimes you request matches for those units through coordinated entry, what we can do is have a list that is specifically CHA tailored, and then we'll have probably put fake clients in there and then remove them only when you're requesting a match. But we can talk further, Dana. It depends, because it depends on the specific program. So yes, Azalea, an empty room will automatically prompt a match. Yes. Or the matching team will know that that's an option open to them. Will there be anything put in place to transfer clients to Shelter Point Automatic? No. So Elias, I'm not sure how many clients you're talking about, if it's like 100, 500, I don't. No, there's not. And I don't know how long it would take to put in a lot of clients, but from my experience, just putting clients in is the easy part. But if you do anticipate a lot of issues with that, in terms of the timeline, like having it done by next week, you can reach out to me. So Pamela McKenzie asks, so once we receive an email referral from Catholic Charities, are we supposed to enter that person in the bed while we work on the match before we know that match will be eligible or able to be contacted? So no, you only need to put the person in the bed or in the unit when you are working with them. Similarly, like what you do with the enrolled need status. So even though it's not 100%, you're working with the client and you're anticipating entering them and housing them in your project. So it's similar. So you're going to enter them and then update the need status to enrolled. So you're going to enter them once you enroll them. Will this webinar be repeated? Yes, it can be repeated, and I can also post it. But yes, given your questions, I may end up just doing another webinar. For us, next week isn't quite doable. We have 6 programs with over 120 units. So Stephen, again, just do what you can and then let me know. If you can let me know by next week where you're at, that would be good. And just kind of give it a shot at least before next week so you can see what the time is like. So Shawana asks, are we able to just keep the unit on a fake hold while we complete the intake process, or are you requesting that we add them to the bed during this process? And if so, we would not be able to add both matches when 2 are received. Right, so you shouldn't be adding 2, excuse me. So when you get to 2 matches, 2 referrals, typically you're only ever going to move on to the enrolled process for 1. The other one you're going to rematch request, or you're going to, yeah, it's going to say, and I should specify there are 3 rematch requests that don't trigger a 2-to-1 rematch, because it's like rematch requested because unit is not available, or rematch requested because client needs a navigator, and then I'm forgetting the third one, but there are 3 that are called rematch requests that don't actually trigger a second rematch to your project. So I can understand it's a little confusing because it's one of them's called rematch requested, client navigation needed, and so it's more of like a client-centered rematch request as opposed to the project. But you don't keep the fake client in the project. You just keep it open until you enroll the client. So the fake client is only when you're not enrolling anybody, or you're not going to have anybody in that unit, or you don't anticipate requesting a match for that unit at all. Could you please, oh, okay, Elias asked, could you please show us, because we never use shelter point. If you need further instruction than what I just showed, and I can do like a little snippet and keep that handy on the help desk so it's easier for you to see. If you need more, TA than this, I will work with you and hopefully help you get your clients in, or at least do a few with you so that you can see. But I will post this online, and I'll timestamp the spots where I showed, but I can also do a little snippet and keep it on our help desk. And then Ricky asks, does it matter if we enter a client in a bed they weren't match requested for? So like you're saying, if you requested, you said individual, I don't know, accessible, and you put them in a non-accessible unit, that should not be a problem. I can double check that question though, because I'm thinking of some more complicated scenarios where it may matter, and I'm not 100% sure. So let me look into that, Ricky, because that's a really good question. And I know you guys have that situation quite a bit. So and I should say, like, so if you have 20 individual units, 10 of them are accessible, we're looking at the type, not the specific unit. So that's only a split of 10 to 10. So we're looking at the accessible versus the non-accessible and how many matches were made to the accessible. So it's not always very specific unit to unit unless you have a unit that's very unique and has a lot of qualifiers or qualifiers that don't match any other unit in your list. How does the system know we've already received 2 matches if they say empty, or we are placing a hold on that unit after we receive matches? So when you get a referral, you go, and I'll just show you guys. I do know that some people forget sometimes to do the need status update, so let me just show you real quick. So if you're in the client record, you go to service transactions, you can view entire service history, go to referrals, and then this is the second status that will be here, because the first status is the one that the match team completed. It says, awaiting housing provider response. And so if it says awaiting housing provider response, or if you need to edit it for any reason, you click the pencil, go all the way down, and click, let's say, enrolled. And at that point, you're going to go to the unit list and enter the person into the unit. But if you entered a rematch requested and you never entered the person into the bed, we're not going to add that client to that unit, if that makes sense. We're not going to make another match unless you've got 10 other units that are identical, if that makes sense. So the point, what we just need you guys to do is make sure to keep this updated. So if you say enrolled, go to Shelter Point and update the unit list. Okay. So let's see, other questions. So yeah, thank you. Follow-up question. Will Catholic Charities know that Catholic Charities, the matching team, know that they have already matched a referral with an empty bed so they don't accidentally send multiple matches for an empty bed? Yes, and that's where we need you all to update the need statuses, because our matching team will know how many referrals were made to that type of unit, or actually we'll have just a clear column that says this number of referrals can be made to that type of unit. Okay, so how quickly will we need to update the need status to prevent getting multiple matches for one empty bed? So again, this policy has not changed. So we have need status timeliness standard. Within 30 days of receiving the initial CS referral, housing providers must update the referral need status to represent the household status, etc. So this is what we want you to be doing within the first 30 days. The first time you get the referral, you should be updating that to attempting contact within 2 days. So that doesn't change. None of that piece of it changes. And then if I receive a match and it takes me the entire 14 days to enroll them, will that available bed continue to show on your end and produce a rematch? So no, because the match will have been made, and then we'll know how many referrals have been made to that type of unit. Okay. Okay, what is the time frame for getting a match when the bed is empty? Again, that's a little trickier. That's more a question for the matching team. But we're hoping that this process will expedite some of that, because the matching team will get a daily email and be able to look at the empty units and better be able to match based on that. And so I don't know exactly the time frame, but that may be more of a question for the matching team. Is there a minimum or maximum number of people standard to a 1-bedroom or studio? That is a program question, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'd assume, no, I can't assume anything. I mean, I'm assuming it has to do with your grant and what they determine. So if it's a singles project, it's singles. I'm actually not sure if it's a singles unit, if you can house a couple. But if anyone else wants to try to answer that within a question, you can do that. But yeah, I'd have to check in about that. And then, okay, so we've already asked about, yeah. Is there a minimum of accessible units that we were required to have? That is also a program question. So these are questions I can bring to the program team, or you can email Karen, or you can email your whoever, you can email your HUD rep, or you can, yeah. So these questions I personally cannot answer. We have rental assistance units that have expansion units. How do we request matches for expansion units? I don't know about that. So I would need some additional information. This is also something I can bring to somebody else, a colleague. So anything I can't answer here, I will try to get an answer to, and I will email you. So here's another question. For us, the number of people who can live in a unit depends on the age and gender, et cetera, et cetera. So the min-max depends on the household makeup. Yes. So that is where we really just want absolute min, absolute max, and to figure out if a match is made and the family doesn't qualify, then we're gonna have to bring it back to the drawing board. So these are a lot of really good questions, and again, there are a couple of things that we know we haven't worked out on our end, and we continue to figure out ways to work it out and the best ways to work it out. So that last one, Sarah, you asked, is a good one too. In addition to location, so if somebody prefers to not be on the south side or not be on the west side, et cetera, we're going to have to figure out how to designate that with the different units, and whether or not, like if you're just you have your building location and you're set, that's much easier. If you have scattered site and you work with specific landlords in a certain area, that gets a little trickier. And so we're going to have to figure out that down the road, and it may take some trial and error for that. So yeah, that is the questions that we have. I'm definitely gonna print these up and make an FAQ. I'm gonna create an article so you all can refer to it, and then I will do just like a brief showing you how to enter exit people and put that up on the article. And then in the meantime, what we want you all to do, of course, is to enter. First of all, check if you have Shelter Point. I think it defaults when we set up users that you get access to Shelter Point, but there may be people that for whatever reason we took Shelter Point off. So you just check, make sure you have Shelter Point. And then make sure for the projects that you think that you should have unit lists for, make sure you have a unit list, and then make sure that the unit list looks correct. And if you have any questions or you're not sure if it's correct, let me know and I will check it. And then as you're entering people, I know this makes it a little more challenging or a little more time consuming, I should say. You do want to make sure to put the correct date for the clients that have been there for a long time. Okay. And I will, let's see, where does this match? Last question, when does this match policy go live? So we will keep you up to date as every step moves forward. So again, like I've already heard that next week would be challenging for some providers to get all of their people into the units. That's what we're shooting for. So I would just say aim for that. And then please be in contact if that doesn't work. I've got 50 people on this webinar, so I know that some people are not here that probably should be hearing this, and I know some people said they couldn't make it. So hopefully we'll get this message out to everybody that needs to hear it. And then my best guess right now is December that we would be able to make referrals in this way, because once we get everybody in, we have to tailor our report, make sure we've dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and then have this report being sent to Salistrata on a daily basis. So yeah. Let's see. Marianne asked, the portion you have completed in this list is the only part we need to complete. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Marianne. But yes, because I already created your list, if that's what you're saying. So when you go in there, you should see a bunch of empty units. Yeah, so I can double check if you need me to, but you should be seeing the units there because we've already created that. If you don't see them, that means we either haven't gotten to you, we've had questions, or we did it wrong or something, or whoever was in charge of asking for us to put it in didn't do that. So for whatever reason, if it's not there, just let us know. And then another question is, after I enter the clients in the units, can I go back and change the unit specifics such as shared bath? So the only thing that we have right now for the units are the family, min, max, so the family and individual, and then for family, min, max, and then for everybody, accessible. So that's all we have right now. We don't have shared bath or anything like that. That may be something we work into the future if we see a high need for it, but for right now we don't have that. And then another question is, there is the date of birth, gender, etc. Are we to put that in for the HOH? No, because when you put the person, I think what you're referring to is the match request form or the rematch request form. I'm not sure, but no, because you have already put the client into the client should be in the system, and then once you put them in the unit, all of their information is there. So all of these are really good questions, and keep them coming. I will, like I said, please email me. I'm gonna first thing put this webinar up, make an article, make it accessible. You'll probably get an email from me today or tomorrow with that, and then you can just keep asking questions because this helps us to hone in on any issues that might come about. So again, thank you very much, and we will be in touch, and I'll go ahead and stop the webinar now.